Michael Easter is a leading voice on how humans can integrate modern science for improved health, meaning, and performance in life and at work. He is a best-selling author of Scarcity Brain and the Comfort Crisis. How did we get here? It feels like modern life isn't compatible with the way that we were designed all those years ago.
You're a grown-ass man like myself crying because it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. Like, you can't measure that. And that changes people. For all of time, we were hunter-gatherers, and our job was to basically have some kids, find some food, and not die.
There is a wider health issue at stake, isn't there, with people that aren't comfortable with being bored?
If you go spend 3 nights outside in a kind of off-the-grid place, your mental health will never be better.
Michael, I just want to establish at the top of this pod the fact that you live in Vegas and you're wearing a hoodie and a cap. So I know it's early in the morning for you, but I mean, what part of you is not understanding what the weather around you might or might not be doing?
The part of me that is always freezing cold. So I run cold, and so I wear hoodies in the summer. I'll even go out in them when it's 100. I just love baking. It's great.
Do you know what's really contradictory is that you look really comfortable, and yet a lot of what you talk about is how we need to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable. Do you like that segue? There's a segue for you.
That was a very, very good turn there. I give you points for that one. Yes.
So let's embrace discomfort. Let's embrace a little discomfort on this pod and try and understand why that is important for us. I know you've written 2 books now, The Comfort Crisis and The Scarcity Brain, which are very well known and respected. Just explain to me why we need to get more comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, so if you look at the things that improve people's lives in the context of today, you often have to go through discomfort to get the benefit. So great example, exercise. Exercise sucks when you do it. Like, no one wants to exercise. But after you do that, you become healthier over time. Right? If you wanted to improve your mental health, you probably have to ask yourself some hard questions, have some hard conversations. And that sucks in the short term, but in the long run, it improves your life. So I think that really the story of life improvement today is being willing to go through short-term discomfort to get a long-term benefit.
How did we get here? It feels like modern life isn't compatible with the way that we were designed all those years ago. I mean, is that part of the problem here?
Yeah, it's definitely part of the problem. So when you look at the things that most impact your day-to-day life, everything from how you get from point A to point B, how you get your food, how you interact with other people, all these different things. They're all new in the grand scheme of time and space, and they're all designed to make your life easier and more comfortable. So, for example, like, people don't have to go hunt and gather their food anymore, which used to take a ton of effort every single day. We live at 72 degrees, where in the past we were just outside and exposed to the elements. We also spend 93% of our time indoors, and in the past we literally were outdoorsy in the sense that we spent every single moment outdoors. Right? And on and on and on. And this has fundamentally changed us as people. Now, people are basically wired to do the next easiest, most comfortable thing. And that's because in the past, doing the next easiest, most comfortable thing was sort of like this life hack, right? It would help you avoid burning calories when it was hard to find food. It would keep you warm. It would keep you safe, right? Doing the easy, comfortable thing always helped humans until we really started to change and make our environments more comfortable. And this mostly started happening after the Industrial Revolution. And this manifests itself in so many different ways in our life. Another good stat I like to throw out is that our ancestors were probably 14 times more active than we are today in the modern world. 14 times. And when you look at what kills us, by and large, it's all these chronic diseases that are linked to the fact that we are so sedentary now. And I also realize the irony of saying this as I am sitting in a wonderfully comfortable chair.
So how do we understand that there's a problem? How do we go about solving it? Because the problem is modern life gets in the way of those solutions as well. So what do we need to do to be more proactive about making things right?
Yeah. Well, I do like to say that the problems that I am talking about, I consider them very good problems to have in the grand scheme of time and space, right? So it's that we've gotten so good at progress that we're just facing side effects of progress. Now, those are better problems to have than the opposite. So I would much rather worry about eating too much food rather than going, oh my God, I need to keep hiking to find food and I can't find food and I'm starving, right? But there's still problems and you still have to deal with them. And so I think that one thing that I talk about is this idea of 2% and being a 2%er. So this comes from this study that found that only 2% of people take the stairs when there's also an escalator available. Now, 100%
I'm
of
that
people
2%er.
know.
I'm that 2%er on the basis that I get
Yes.
claustrophobic. I get claustrophobic. So I'm not doing it for the right reasons. I'm just doing it because it makes me feel more comfortable to take the stairs.
Hey, whatever gets you there. I'm fine with whatever. So, but like 100% of people know that if you take the stairs, you're going to get this better long-term return on your health.
Yeah.
Yet 98% of people we just see both of the options and we go escalator. And it goes back to what I was saying about us being wired for comfort, but that doesn't serve us anymore. And people will often say, oh, well, just taking the stairs, like that can't do that much, right? No, there's just a study that came out that found that it reduced all-cause mortality in this big group of people by 35%. People who consistently took the stairs, they lived longer, they were less likely to keel over at any moment. And to me, though, this is not really about the stairs. This is like a metaphor for how we need to think about approaching modern life, and that is being willing to do the thing that is going to be a little bit uncomfortable in the short term, but give us a long-term benefit.
Why are we so bad at embracing the obvious like that? I mean, it's a really obvious thing, isn't it? It's like you stand at the bottom of a staircase and there's a lift to the right of you or an elevator to the right of you and you think, which one? It's pretty obvious which one is going to do you the more favors. So why are we programmed to just choose the easy option every time?
Oh, I mean, we're fighting millions of years of evolution. It has literally never made sense in the grand scheme of time to do something for the sake of burning calories. In fact, if you did that, that would kill you off. Like you would die. There wasn't enough food. Exercise is something that we invented after the Industrial Revolution, where we basically started shifting from having to work for our food. So for all of time, we were hunter-gatherers, and our job was to basically have some kids, find some food, and not die. Those were the three things that humans did for most of the time. Then we eventually invent farming, and then all of a sudden our lives shift over to like, okay, now we have to farm, but that is still really physical labor, right? After the Industrial Revolution, though, people's jobs start to shift where you might work in a factory, and then eventually you start working at a desk, and we start to see that the fact that people who are moving into desk work, they tend to be a lot more sick than people who have maintained sort of the physical work, like that still work in a farm. And we go, oh, it must be the movement. So what the hell should we do about this? And what we do is we invent exercise, right? It's like we build these buildings that are like, hey, you guys that sit at a desk, just go into this building, and we have built you a machine where you're going to walk on a belt, and you can watch television as you do this, but this is going to recoup that farm labor you used to get. Sound like a good deal? People are like, well, no, it sounds like it sucks, but I'll do it anyways. So exercise is just this thing we invented because we're really not programmed to just burn calories for the sake of it. That was a long response, but you get where I'm going with that.
I do. I tell you what we're not also becoming very good at is being very good at being bored. I mean, I see this I've got 2 young children, so I see that in them very, very, very clearly, that there is a huge disconnect between, I said to my daughter the other day, we did a journey from A to B and she was just asking non-stop for like some sort of like, the phone, an iPad, whatever it might be, a device, just to just take away the humdrum of a normal, commute. And I said to God, we'd spend hours in the car when I was your age, and we'd just look out of the window and we'd make up all sorts of different games and, I Spy and everything else, and what different colour cars we could come up with. And that was our way of sort of alleviating the boredom. And she just couldn't compute. I mean, it just wasn't in her capacity to sort of imagine an idea where you would be bored, or actually boredom might be good for you. So how do we reprogram that bit, because that clearly is an issue as well for all of us, not just kids, us too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started thinking about boredom because in my book, The Comfort Crisis, we spent a month up in the Arctic, and I didn't bring any tech with me, right? And so we would be sitting around and you find yourself bored again. And I had been so used to just like the moment you feel that just twinge of discomfort of boredom, now we have an easy, effortless escape in the form of a phone, right? Or a TV or whatever it might be. And so when I'm up in the Arctic, it's like we had to figure out ways to deal with our boredom. We would read the labels on the food we packed in. We would read the tags on the jacket. I came up with, Christmas shopping lists for my friends and family for like 7 years. And it was just so different. And so it got me interested in this idea of boredom. And to understand boredom and why it can be beneficial, it helps to understand like what boredom is. And you can think of boredom as this evolutionary discomfort that basically tells us whatever you're doing with your time, the return on your time invested has worn thin. So picture that it's like 1 million years ago and we are hunting because we need food and we can't find any animals. So we're just like, nothing's happening. So boredom would kick on and basically tell us, go do something else. Now, in the past, that something else was often productive, right? It would be like, all right, the hunting isn't working, so we're going to go pick berries, we're going to pick potatoes. It's this productive thing. But the problem is that today, when we feel this discomfort of boredom, we've just got these easy, effortless escapes from it. And I would argue many of them aren't that productive. They're not moving our life forward. Not to mention, and I get into this in my other book, Scarcity Brain, these things are just dialed to grab your attention. Like the behavior loops that they lean on in my book, Scarcity Brain, I call it the scarcity loop, first came out of slot machines and then have just been hyper dialed to just grab people's attention and hold it, and then all of a sudden your time passes. And I think when people look back on their lives, they're not going to be like, man, I wish I would have spent a lot more time on TikTok. Like, no. But these things are just dialed to grab us. And then we look back and we're like, dang it, why did I just spend, if you're me, like watching 30 minutes of dog videos? Like, that is not how I want to spend my time. And yet here I am, like deep into the dog videos.
That is the problem of YouTube. What about in terms of the fact that not being bored, trying to phrase this the right way, how if you're not comfortable with boredom, it can be actually really fundamentally damaging to you. I mean, like you said, there's so many, that stuff is distracting, but actually there is a wider health issue at stake, isn't there, with people that aren't comfortable with being bored?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on. So I think if you look at the research on the sort of quote unquote state your brain goes into when you're bored, you can think of it as a kind of rest state. So when you're focused on the outside world, it's like a work state for your brain. And when you're bored, you kind of go inward. And this is like a little bit of a rest state. And right now, because we have so much to pay attention to, we're kind of in this work state all the time. And so having periods of boredom, a lot of research shows, can help relieve stress. It can help relieve burnout. It can do all these beneficial things. And another thing that I love about boredom is there's some really strong and interesting research that shows that it can improve creativity. So there's great studies around this. Like they'll take two groups. One group gets to hang out on their cell phone. The other group, the researchers just like bore the hell out of these people. And then they give them a creativity test. And the bored group always comes up with more creative answers than the non-bored group. And that's because like there's this period of mind wandering that I talked about. It like really allows ideas to kind of flow and get into some different brain states. And I think people have all experienced this too. If you're in, say you're vacuuming and you get like the best idea of your life, or you're in the shower and you get a really good idea. It's because you're not focused on anything else. Your brain is just kind of doing its thing, and like, bam, that's when the good ideas come.
And the other thing you're a big advocate of is obviously being out in the wild and going wild, or being at least in the wilderness. And you talked about that with the Arctic. I mean, what can that do for us? What does that help with fundamentally to make us, just better performers all round?
Oh, I mean, holy hell! Like the big picture on this one is like.